Hello and welcome to Bring the Ring, a new way to handbell. My name is Brenda Austin, and it is my sincere hope that through connecting with us today, you will be inspired to use handbells to make a difference, to add value to our world. Let's get out there and bring the ring. Hello and welcome to Bring the Ring. My name is Brenda Austin, and I'm the Handbell editor at Hope Publishing. With Bring the Ring, we are looking to connect with one another, to reach out, to see how we can help one another and encourage one another. We're talking to composers and seeing how we can learn from them and learn about their processes. Today, we are talking to someone who needs no introduction, Arnold Sherman. We handbell musicians have grown up playing his compositions and arrangements, and he has had a huge impact on the handbell community and continues to write, to do clinics, and to do workshops. So let's welcome Arnold Sherman.
Well, it's good to be here. Thank you. I'm honored that I got asked to do this.
Well, you have had such a huge impact on the handbell community. We all grew up playing your pieces. How did you get started, or what was it like when you got started, and who did you learn from, and who influenced you?
I got introduced to handbells in my first church job. It was part-time and uh, small town in Central Texas. And a family moved into the community that actually owned a set of bells, a 3-octave set of Schulmerichs. And unfortunately, they weren't Methodist. And I've since forgiven the Maxwells that they were not Methodist. But that was my introduction to handbells. At a music camp here in Texas, one summer, Dale Wood was the youth choir and handbell clinician, and that was my actually the probably the biggest introduction to bells, other than just ringing occasionally. Uh, and it was fascinating. Dale's approach was very much handbells are descendants of tower bells, and there's nobody in the tower damping bells. So if you play his music, you have to play it with the thought in mind that there's just a lot of LV, things that let vibrate. As a matter of fact, he's the one that probably got us to where we are in terms of that abbreviation. He was married for a while to a harpist by the name of Linda Hargis, and uh, he borrowed the LV sign from harp literature and also the muffle sign to let people know what's going on. As a matter of fact, if you read real old handbell music, you'll see it's in italics and it's in all in lowercase with the dots, just like you would see it if it was in harp literature.
Ah, very cool.
So,
I didn't know that.
yeah, that's where that comes from. And but yes, his music's incredible, and if you don't play it with that thought in mind, it really just doesn't work at all. And then there were some workshops here in Tyler that Don Alura did. One of the Baptist churches had him in on an annual basis for about 2 or 3 years, and uh, that was incredible. Of course, that's totally the other end of the spectrum from Dale, because Don's, it's everything's at value,
Right,
no
right.
value. So you sort of got both ends of the spectrum there. And then, like a lot of us back in those days, you just sort of learned on the job. There wasn't a lot to do. Also, I went to Eastern National Handbell Festival in Little Rock, Arkansas, and that's where I got back in the early '80s and got introduced to the Thompsons, and that was fascinating. That was another big education,
Uh-huh.
mostly how to start a graded handbell program. And then when the Thompsons literature started to get published, um, because they had a number of youth choirs, and if a youth choir doesn't have a busy handbell part, it's probably not the best thing in the world. So all of their stuff was stacked very heavily and very vertical, and a lot of it was written in the mind of almost being an exercise. So the Hope books that they published, the Ready to Ring and the Begin to Ring books and so forth, there, um, that had a heavy influence on a lot of people in their writing.
Sure, it
So that
did.
things don't have to be quite so sparse. You really can make a bigger, larger, busier sound if you stack chords and so forth. So those were those were the early influences.
That's awesome. Very good. So, did you ever imagine when you were first starting that you would become such a prolific writer and such an impact on all of us?
Ooh, not at all. I like a lot of us. I just wrote, but for two reasons. One of them was, I can do this, and the other one was just writing for groups, writing for what we had and where we were. And I remember the first thing I ever wrote for Bells. I actually pretty much wrote sitting out in front of an elementary school, waiting to pick up some kids to take them to children's choir. It was just a very easy little arrangement. It wasn't very hard, you know. I guess the first time I went to a festival and heard that mass ringing sound for the first time, all those bells, I thought, yeah, I really want to do this. I
Hmm.
really want to do this. And so that got me, I think, started in that direction for
Hmm.
sure.
Hmm. Well, what thoughts or advice do you have for people who are maybe more beginning composers or just kind of getting into it? What thoughts do you have for them?
Well, first is to study. I mean, and I think it really depends on what they want to do.
Hmm.
I mean, if they want to write for their groups, then they need to um, know their ringers and what the ringers are capable of, or what they would like to guide them towards in terms of learning experiences and growing experiences, and um, write for your groups and their strengths. And um, if you're looking to have something published, if you want to take it beyond that, then you just need to study pieces. I mean, really, really, really study them and find out why do you like this piece? What attracts you to this piece? Is it the harmonic progression? Is the melody? Is it, the innovation in the arrangement, or just what is it that drives you to this piece of music? And um, I think those are probably the most important things, for sure, is just to know what's going on. And then looking at publishers. I mean, I've told, I don't know how many different composition classes that, if you have really amazing honking arrangement of Inagata Devita, you're probably not going to send it to Our Ladies of Holy Mercy Publishing Company, that kind of thing. So you have to study catalogs and see what people are publishing, and is it similar to what you're doing or not. Um, and then when you're writing, again, I've told lots of folks this, but when you're writing, to write for the masses, to write for something that people are going to actually play outside of your local congregation, then you have to kind of tread the line between your own aesthetic values, what you really want to write, um, regardless of how it sounds or anything. This is just what I feel, what I hear, and commercial viability on the other hand. And so you sort of have to come to grips with those two things. You have to say, okay, I hear this in my head and I would like to do this, but this isn't going to go anywhere, probably, or not very far. And then you look over here and you go, well, I see what's probably going to sell, but I'm not so sure I can go there. I'm not so sure I want to do that. And so if you can find some sort of medium where, okay, I know I'm stretching things, but I'm not going to stretch them as far as I probably could if I just let myself go, you know, that kind of thing.
Hmm. Yes, and often just because something's published doesn't mean that it's great. It means that it has a lot of viability to a lot of different groups,
Mhm.
that it is useful to a lot of different groups.
Yeah, I've told people that, and when you submit things to publishers, the last thing you want to feel is that the rejection notice. Maybe you get a rejection notice. Rejection notice doesn't mean, "Ooh, it's awful. Don't ever do this again. Why did you send this to me in the first place?" That's not what that no means. Most of the time, what that no means is just for this time in this place, this piece isn't going to work.
Hmm.
And it could be for lots of different reasons. Maybe the piece needs a little bit more development. Maybe the piece is one of three or four pieces that the publishing company is considering at the time, and they're all in the same vein.
Hmm.
And the publisher has to make a decision. The publisher can't take, five arrangements of Hymn to Joy, in any one publishing cycle, or I would think they probably wouldn't. Uh, but so it's that. As a matter of fact, there's one story when I sent two pieces pretty close together to Hope. One of them was Song of Joy, which ended up in the catalog, and the other one was Laudation, which ended up with a different publisher. So when I sent them, knowing Laudation was a little bit harder piece and Song of Joy was much more accessible, I thought, I think I know how this is going to go, let's see what happens. Let's see what they do. And sure enough, I got Laudation back, and Hope published Song of Joy, which is still in the catalog and been played a lot. And I sent a Laudation to Flammer. And so whenever I would see Dave Weck, we would always talk about that. And whenever we'd be at a festival or at a seminar and they were ringing Laudation and he could see me, he would just look over me and just grimace, because he had to make a really hard decision at that particular time. But that's just one illustration of what happens sometimes. It's just not so much that the piece is bad. It's
Right.
just it doesn't fit what the publisher's looking for. So
Right. Doesn't fit that slot that they have right then.
mhm.
So we're gonna listen to a couple of your pieces today. The first one, Jesus Loves Me. What can you tell us about that? Either your process or what can you tell us about that piece?
That piece actually started out as a piano piece, actually an improvisation. In my early days here in Tyler, I did on Sunday mornings preschool music at church, which was a lot of fun. And we had a child in there that had San Felipe syndrome, I believe is what it's called. And it's a disease that affects the nervous system, and it's fatal. Most children that get it end up passing away in their early teens. And we had a young girl, Callie McCormick, who had it. And Callie's mom was very intent on having Callie mainstreamed. And she was a handful because her attention span was seconds long. So whenever Callie came to preschool music, which was quite often, somebody had to be one-on-one with her just to kind of corral her and keep her on track as much as we possibly could. And none of this was Callie's fault. It was just her situation. It was just what she was born with. And so, but whenever we would sing Jesus Loves Me, Callie would stop whatever she was doing and she would just come sit down in the group. And she would stay there and sing as long as we would do it. And the minute that was over, she was gone
Mm.
again. So Callie did pass away in her early teens, and her parents asked me to play at her service. And so I did an improvisation on Jesus Loves Me, and I remember at the time thinking, I maybe could do something with this at another time. So I did sit down and write the arrangement, and that's where that piece comes from. Uh, it was its inspiration and its complete reason for being. So,
Well, I had not heard that story before, so I appreciate hearing it. And how about we listen to the piece?
okay.
That was just beautiful, very sweet, and it is all the more meaningful knowing a little bit about the story behind it. So appreciate you sharing that.
Oh, you're welcome.
So I got a question on Facebook that someone asked me to ask you. Ellie was asking, what has inspired you to write more music for bell trees, and what do you like about the sound of a bell tree?
Writing more for Beltree is a direct, pretty much a direct result of where we are right now in the middle of the pandemic, and the fact that uh, we have been able to do some ringing in church with larger groups, but it's all been non-table, uh, virtually no bell changes uh, approach, because we just don't have the space on a Sunday morning to dedicate to a set of handbell tables and spreading people out. So everybody's at a music stand, two bells, maybe a third bell, and that's it. So bell trees give you a little bit more luxury. And again, it goes back to that LV sound. There's just something about that sound uh, that's very appealing. I mean, it's just, indigenous to the instrument. Um, and to keep the trees from being heavy, and also personal preference, I suppose, I really tend to use more higher bells than anything else, which means the decay is quicker. And so damping really isn't as much of an issue sometimes
Hmm.
because the decay is so quick with those bells. And we have a young lady at church who's very proficient and loves to play, and is very quick study. So I've written two or three pieces here lately because I just enjoy that sound. And once again, it's just having somebody it's just meeting the needs of the people in the congregation.
Hmm.
Somebody has a gift and they want to share, so you try to do what you can for them. So,
Right. Necessity is often the inspiration.
oh, definitely, definitely. So that's why, and it just physically, it's very striking. It's a visually striking image to see somebody standing behind a tree and going after it with mallets and so forth.
Hmm.
It's
I
just
agree.
mesmerizing.
It is. It is. So when I was getting ready to talk to you and deciding what pieces we were going to talk about, I just started asking people, "What's your favorite Arnold Sherman piece?" And so many of them came back with "Oh Sacred Head," and it's kind of a simple piece, but yet it's so lovely. What can you tell us about "Oh Sacred Head," and why do you think it's a favorite of people for years, for decades?
Well, for one thing, the tune is incredible. Um, Although it's kind of funny, it's one of the tunes that we have that did not start as any sort of a sacred tune at all. It's secular. As a matter of fact, it was in a shifting, pretty much in a shift. It's a Renaissance tune, and it's pretty much in a shifting 3/4 6/8 kind of feel. If you hear the original rhythms, and very much upbeat, and you hear that in that version, it's almost like it's a jolt, and when you read the secular words, something about being jilted by your true love or something like that, you think, how did this come to find its way into the church? But it did. And the church has a way of kind of sneaking things in like that. That's very much the history of hymnody and church music, for sure. um, but I've always loved that tune, and Bach is the one that kind of straightened it out and homogenized it for us and put it in the format that we know. So, and I've always loved Bach's uh, chorale preludes, and uh, the most famous of which is probably Jesu Joy of Man's Desiring. So I've always thought that, if Bach was alive, I probably should be sending him, some of the royalties for that piece, because it's pretty much a literal just taking his form and using "Oh Sacred Head" and my own material. But if you were to analyze the pieces, you would realize how closely they are in form, because I just use that as a model
Hmm.
when I set it up. So, and that's how that just sort of transpired. It just kind of went from there. So,
Well, talk about a good teacher. J.S. Bach is a great person to model.
Oh, yes, exactly, for sure.
Do you have any thoughts on maybe some advice for directors that are preparing this piece, how they might go about bringing out some of the melodies or the harmonies, or what thoughts do you have there?
Well, the melody pretty much lies in the higher bells, so this it's probably not as much of an issue there. And phrasing, which I think is still probably the last one of the last great places that handbell people need to explore. We don't phrase very well or as well as we could, and that's sort of because of the way the instrument is. Um, if you're singing a piece or if you're playing it on your violin or your flute, clarinet, your trumpet or whatever, you're in charge of the whole melody. Piano, same thing. You're in charge of the whole melody, you yourself. And so phrasing becomes much more natural to get into once people teach you the rudiments and you become aware of it. But you go to handbell music, and if you're just, let's, for instance, you just have just a bare naked melody that you're playing, there's anywhere from 3 to 5 people that possibly are involved with playing that melody, and they all have to think like one. And that's hard. That's
Mhm.
very, very hard to do. And it changes constantly. I mean, it's not always the same 5 people or 4 people
Right,
because the melody changes register.
right.
And then if you have the accompaniment that sits close to the melody, then you have to be aware of when you're a harmonic note and when you're a melodic note if you're trying to make sure that that phrasing continues and is there.
Hmm.
There's so many things. It's so much more complex, and that's why I have a large number of friends that are musicians but are in other disciplines that are familiar enough with handbell music enough to say, I don't know how you can handle it. I don't know, first of all, how you get it done. And second of all, don't you have to settle sometimes for less than what you hear musically? And the answer, to the less part is, well, it's a quest, it's a goal to make sure that the phrasing is there. Um, and yeah, it is pretty miraculous when it happens.
Hmm.
I played with the Dallas Handbell Ensemble for a while when David Davidson was doing the group. And part of the joy of ringing with that group was ringing with the Dallas Symphony Orchestra at Christmas time. And one year we played Bill Griffin's arrangement of Trepak from
Hmm.
uh, Nutcracker. And that was our solo piece. And we worked hard on it. And you have that incredible bass run, dum, da, dum, bumpy, dum, that's, I think one of the cellists, I think was the second chair player, came up and said, we've been listening to you play your piece, and we also play that run. The cello section plays that run, and we decided at rehearsal the other night that if we had that run and each one of us in the section only had 2 of the notes, we probably couldn't do it. So I mean that's part of the challenge, and part of the beauty of handbell ringing. I think it's in that sharing, and I think that's why handbell groups bond. Besides the fact that in non-COVID days, you're up close and personal with 2 people from the get-go, from the time
Yep.
you get into rehearsal until the time you leave and in performance.
Yep.
So there's a bonding there that just is amazing.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, in the way in O Sacred Head, you've laid out dynamics that it's, often 4 up and 4 down, and just that teaching that discipline of each note needs to get a little louder and each note needs to get little softer. That all those skills are things we've got to teach our ringers. So I think it's a
But
great piece for developing musicality.
well, the other thing too is because of the steady quarter notes in that piece, that's another degree of difficulty because
Mhm.
the tendency is to rush
Sure.
those. So it's a wonderful opportunity to teach subdivision of the beat so that the
Yes.
ringers are literally not just counting 1, 2, 3, 4, but it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And if they'll feel that and hear that in their head and play to that, then the spacing becomes much more even.
Hmm.
So, it is a good teaching piece.
Well, let's listen.
Oh, what a lovely piece. It's understandable why that is a favorite of so many. And I hope that folks can use it and find a place for it. It's been in our repertoire for a long time, but maybe it's time to pull it out again and play it. So, as we're kind of wrapping up here today, what words of wisdom do you have for us as we are, entering this time where we're starting to get a little more freedoms and a little bit more music making? And what words of advice do you have for us?
Well, I hope everybody gets back to it as soon as they can, as soon as their situations allow them. And uh, handbell ringers tend to be, fiercely dedicated people, which I've always loved. So there's no doubt in my mind that things will come back. It will be a new normal, and we really don't know exactly what that'll be like. But uh, maybe the time apart has given all of us a chance to take a little bit of stock of what's going on and things that maybe our minds are a little clearer. Maybe we sense a new direction or two with what we're doing, or there's some new challenges we want to take on, or the time apart is just giving us has given us clarity in terms of what we were doing before or not doing before, and that we can go back with with clearer thoughts and minds, and or maybe we've just listened to a lot of wonderful literature and we're just chomping at the bit to get some things and get after some things that we've just been dreaming about until all of this kind of winds its way down.
Well, thank you so much for being here today and chatting with us. It is just a real honor and pleasure to have you chatting with us.
Well, thank you. The pleasure's all been all mine for sure. I've enjoyed this immensely.
Well, good. Well, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Brenda.
Thanks for joining us today. Brenda Austin is the Handbell editor for Hope Publishing, where we are equipping musicians for excellence. Visit hopepublishing.com or call 1-800-323-1049 for all your music needs. For questions about this episode of Bring the Ring, contact Brenda at brenda@hopepublishing.com. Our show notes can be found on our Facebook page or in the comments below.